Why do you say Obama was right? If we didn't do this shit, Iran might have had a nuke and they wouldn't be getting their shit pushed in. No. If the JCPOA continued, and that we normalize relationships, relations with Iran, Iran would be a more prosperous nation as a consequence. But Donald Trump cast that aside. But I'm going to watch this instead.
Now, Fox News contributor and former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, thank you for getting up early. If you will, just your reaction to what has transpired and to put into context for us, how significant of an operation, of a moment is this?
Well, good morning. It's a very significant.
Dude, every time I see Pompeo, he's just like shriveling. I feel like he gave his life force. I know it's Ozempic, obviously, but I like to think in my headcanon that he's giving all of his power to Israel. You know what I mean? Like every day, Pompeo's life force is being sucked out of him so that Israel can keep doing keep up its anti-aircraft defense capabilities and anti-air defense capabilities. If Iran keeps Israel, Mike Pompeo is going to shrivel further. Stop. Why won't they stop Tel Aviv? Every day that goes by, he's just, how is this the same guy? I'm telling it's because he's giving his life force to Israel, man. I'm telling you. This is either the most devastating Ozempic hit of all time. This is the amount of Ozempic. Like, from this to this implies that he's eaten like 3 almonds in the past year, okay? That's his entire consumption of food. He's just been burning the existing supply nonstop. Or the second thing, which I think is more likely, he's giving up his life force to defend Israel. Biden's White House Jewish liaison. This marks a significant and historic step in preventing Iran, the world's foremost state sponsor of terrorism, from obtaining a weapon. God bless America, says Shelley Greenspan. Thank you. This certainly is going to make things great for Jews in America. Yeah. The more we strike Iran at the behest of Israel, and the more our politicians openly talk about how Israel is dominating every facet of our existence and our politics, the more the everyday American thinks we are certainly not a nation state totally captive to the whims of Israel, which you guys then claim is the Jewish state, and it's doing it for the Jews. This certainly will not increase enmity towards the Jews in America. I'm sure these guys are thinking this through. Good stuff.
Significant operation. Our military did indeed, as President Trump said, carry out an operation that there's no other country in the world could do. That's been years and years in the making, but the folks who were flying last night were brave and capable and clearly delivered on their mission. And every American should be incredibly proud of that and thankful for them. As for what resulted, the world is safer today. And you were asking earlier, what do the Gulf Arab states think this morning? I am confident that they too are safer. So this was important not only for Israel and for the Gulf Arab states, but to keep the United States of America safe as well. President Trump, I served with him for 4 years. For a decade now, he's been very clear. They're not going to get a weapon in Iran. And this is just a further manifestation of his commitment to that over a long period of time. And last night, he executed a mission that was righteous and decent and important and will keep us all safer.
Mr. Secretary, you say the world is safer today, and I understand the logic there. But, I mean, I think it's reasonable to say that the service members stationed in the Middle East probably aren't safer today. Do you have any prediction on what Iran's retaliation might look like if they would target capabilities as opposed to troops or anything like that?
No, that's a good point. Look, it's always hard to put your own soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines' lives at risk. I remember when we took the Soleimani strike, we were very worried and had done a ton of work to keep folks at Al Asad Air Base and our other facilities in the Middle East safe. I'm confident that the administration has taken those protections as well. Make no mistake about it, the Iranians could come after that, but President Trump has set the course, right? He has said, you're not going to have a weapon, and if you come after an American, we're going to wreak absolute hell on you. I think the Iranian regime is thinking through that in the same way they did after we took out General Soleimani. While we had some soldiers injured, their response was relatively weak.
Gonna put this out here one more time. I hate to do it, but the Globe Twitter accounts are correct. The Obama dick riders are correct on this. Okay. Sorry. That's ridiculous. Okay. Every single time you say this, just show them the chart. It's just liberals are right on this. It gives me no pleasure to report, but the libs are right and Obama was right on this. Diplomacy was the correct option. Diplomacy was the right thing to do. It was the most effective solution. And even the way that Obama reached the diplomacy was still, of course, because this is the United States of America, really up. Okay? Increasing sanctions and forcing Iran to take away the sanctions, forcing Iran's hand by saying, hey, we'll take the sanctions away, only to kickstart the process of just like using sanctions on every country for no reason. Why do you say Obama was right? If we didn't do this shit, Iran might have had a nuke and they wouldn't be getting their shit pushed in. No. If the JCPOA continued, and that we normalize relationships, relations with Iran would be a more prosperous nation as a consequence. But Donald Trump cast that aside because it doesn't just the JCPOA has the other side of this, the American involvement, which is or the American side of the deal, which is to lower sanctions and to allow Iran to participate in the global economy. Why didn't Biden try to get the JCPOA back? Much to think about that. I wonder why. Maybe because he is also ideologically invested in the greater Israeli project in spite of being a Catholic. Despite the fact that Biden was a Catholic, not even an evangelical Christian, he was an ultra-Zionist, an omega Zionist. Maybe that has something to do with it.
And they are even in a far weaker place. Their capabilities today are even far weaker than they were when we took that strike back in the first Trump administration. So I suspect they're trying to figure out what to do. I'll be very surprised if they challenge President Trump and the United States Department of Defense.
Well, I hope that you're absolutely right, Mike, because we've been told that the regime is insane and genocidal. So let's hope that they're being rational right now. One of the things that I'm concerned about is that we've had 4 years of an open border. And so one of the, we've been talking about what kind of retaliatory attacks they can make in that region. But we've had an open border and a record number of unknown and known terrorists coming across our border over the last 4 years. So what kind of implications does that have for the United States right now in terms of potential sleeper cells and attacks actually here on the homeland?
I've been talking about this risk for 4 years. It's probably even slightly heightened now. There's no doubt the Iranian regime has tried to put active agents on the ground in Europe and Brussels and Paris and London and indeed here in the United States. And you're absolutely right. We've had a wide open border. We know that at least a couple of hundred folks who were already on the American terror designated watch list who came across the border during the Biden administration. So that risk is not zero. It could be that that'll be a method by which the Iranians will choose to try and take vengeance and respond and to deter the United States. I'm counting on our FBI and local law enforcement to help keep all of us safe, including those who have been threatened directly by the regime itself. But more importantly than that, I think the Iranians' calculus has to be very careful here. They have to understand that while we spared the political leadership and energy.
Sub Hasan, if you're pro JCPOA, how does that mesh with Iran needing a nuke to protect themselves? Just curious. If Iran was treated like a country with dignity and sovereignty, as was supposed to be the process in which the JCPOA is implemented, then they don't have a necessity for nukes. America doesn't play that game, of course, and therefore Iran does need nukes, especially now more than ever. There are plenty of countries that currently don't have nukes. It's just they haven't been in the crosshairs of America, at least to this degree.
The infrastructure targets last night, there's no guarantee that will continue if they come after an American, whether that's one of our soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines abroad, or someone here in the United States.
And you yourself were famously threatened by the regime as well. Meantime, I want to get your thoughts on this because satellite images show lines of trucks leaving the Fordo facility on Thursday, about 48 hours prior to the strike. Are you worried that Iran was able to move out material from Fordo? Again, it's unclear exactly what was in those trucks, but, you know, your instinct says they moved some material, whatever they could potentially move in those trucks. Are you worried about that?
I think this is going to be something that the U.S. intelligence community and the Israeli intelligence community have to work their way through.
Why would anyone agree after this? No, 100%. I think that the only way the world moves in the direction of which is, I don't know, it seems very, very unlikely, but the only way that they would ever agree to it is everybody has nukes. And we just evolve past that point. I don't know. I just don't think that it'll happen. I think right now, as a new world order is being designed in front of our eyes, Ron was saying about like the law of the jungle is actually just the truth. It's always been might is right politics. International law has just basically been paperwork that America uses to justify its military conquest against people. They'll say, oh, our enemies are violating international human rights. We have to intervene militarily. And then they will literally fucking intervene and violate human rights altogether. That has been the case. The only thing that stops America from entertaining these violent ambitions is another powerful superpower that will force them to stop. It's even more clear now. I think it's undeniable. Anyone that still entertains the notion of rules and norms at this stage, I think is just like deluding themselves, is purposely telling themselves a fucking lie with the hopes that there is some semblance of order on the planet, or maybe because they've benefited tremendously from the current rule-based international order, or their ambitions, their appetite for violence has been sated from it. And therefore, they think, oh no, we have to cynically keep talking about this rule-based international order when it's obviously incredibly consequential and incredibly violent for the global South.
Through to figure out what they did to disperse not only those cylinders that held the highly enriched uranium, but their intellectual capital as well, that human capital that drives their program forward, and the components of their ballistic missile system. They'll try to hide them and scatter them. I think that's something that we'll have to stay after. I suspect that in spite of the real success last night, there'll still be work to do to fully eradicate every remnant of their nuclear program. But I think we shouldn't forget that's a massive setback from what President Trump did last night. The change in the nature of the Iranian capability to launch or build a nuclear weapon is now enormous.
Do you think it's a bad idea to remove Iran's nuclear capabilities? Yes, it's fucking insane. What are you talking about? Yes, Iran has every right. Iran has every right to have, as a sovereign nation state, Iran has every fucking right to have a nuclear program.
Diminished as a result of what the Israelis have done over the last 9 days and what the United States of America did that it only could do last night.
Hey, Mr. Secretary, I want to ask you about this operation, and it's what our colleague here, Jen Griffin, says maybe one of the most remarkable operational security feats pulled off. We, of course, learned from the tracking of B-2s headed to Guam west, but it appears the real package delivered flew east, made this 30-hour round trip, and no one knew about it. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, bravo. Well done. Hard to do in Washington, D.C. to keep narratives from leaking, storylines from leaking. The administration did truly, truly good work. I think there was strategic campaign as well of misinformation, right, to move those bombers to Guam. I think, by the way, I think it sent a message to the Chinese Communist Party, too. You might want to stay out of this. But I also think it was an effort when President Trump said, hey, you've got up to 2 weeks. I think he heard from the Iranians they weren't remotely interested in negotiating seriously. And he said, no, we're going to move quickly. We're going to do the necessary. We're going to make sure they don't have this capability. And so I think this was a incredibly strategic operation. And I think both the Russians and the Chinese now understand that President Trump is not President Biden. And not only did we make the world safer in the specific with respect to this Iranian threat, but President Trump has grabbed the peace through strength mantra, the peace through strength model that President Reagan so expertly wielded,